हमारे लहजे में ये तवाज़ुन बड़ी सौबत के बाद आया. Tawazun is equilibrium and saubat is difficulty. हमारे लहजे में ये तवाज़ुन बड़ी सौबत के बाद आया. कई मिजाजों के दश्त देखे, कई रवैयों की खाक छानी. The poise and equilibrium in my personality has come after a lot of difficulty. I have battled through the dense forests of mood swings and sifted through the dust of many attitude changes. Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Ranjit Choudhary and I'm a urologist by profession. So let me tell you my story from as far back as I can remember. I went to a boarding, the Scindia School, and in no time I became the embodiment of a perfect student. This is a journey of how I kept on piling the proverbial perfections until life made me embrace all that I considered imperfect. I was an extremely shy and introverted kid, and I was terribly homesick. All I wanted to do was to run back to my parents and home. For me, a boarding school was a very lonely place. You know, the most human need, the basic and the innate human need, is to feel loved, accepted, and appreciated. And I found the gateway to that in academics. And I clutched and lashed onto it completely. In no time, I was outscoring all my fellow students and acing all my exams. My teachers were extremely fond of me and were quick to spot my literary abilities and my knack for public speaking. And I did extremely well there too. This monomaniacal determination that helped me ace all my cerebral pursuits was my undoing elsewhere. I determinedly avoided all forms of physical activities and firmly developed a notion that sports was nothing but a wastage of time and energy. My batchmates, they did their level best to persuade me to play some kind of a sport, but I was unrelenting. So much so that when they would be playing football and ask me to simply stand guard under a goalpost, I would run away as fast as I could from the field. And when it actually came to running, as in a cross-country race, I would trundle lazily to finish in the last position. No, anyone with a basic knowledge of the human body could have pointed out that I was only employing the services of my higher centers and everything below the level of my brainstem was simply lying idle. You know, the strongest of bonds and friendships are forged not in classrooms but on the sports field. And my distance from them ensured that I remained lonely but happily ensconced in the safe haven of my books. And so this pattern continued year after year after year until I must have won almost every academic award in my school. Finally, one day, the time came to say a goodbye, to never return back to the school as a student. I vividly remember the bus ride from the school to the railway station. And never had I felt so sad and melancholic while going back home. And this was an emotion that I couldn't quite identify with. After all, I was going back home. And it was only several years later that I understood that whenever there is an unfinished business with a place or a person, the heart registers, and so it aches. I always wanted to be a doctor, and in no time I got into a medical college. However, the obsession to chase down academic excellence, it continued unabated. I topped half of my university exams, including the prestigious final one, and had gold medals in more than half of my subjects. Thereafter, I pursued a 3-year master's course in general surgery, or the MS. The residency programs in our country are one of the most difficult and challenging, but also very rewarding. And my department was no different. So I toiled day in and day out and worked as hard as anybody else in the department. A couple of months before my final exams, my thesis paper won the very prestigious first prize in the state conference. And this, coupled with my unblemished 3 years of residency and an excellent academic knowledge, made me a sure bet to clear the exam. Now, while awaiting the results of the MS exam, I also appeared in the very difficult and competitive super specialty entrance exam, which was held at a national level. But since I had not prepared for this exam earnestly, I was not expecting much out of it. A few days later, the results came. First, that of the super specialty entrance exam. And very, very surprisingly, I was one of the only 2 students from the entire batch who had managed to clear it. I was ecstatic. I was thrilled beyond measure, and that was the happiest day of my life. I knew that it was only a small matter of clearing my MS before I could pursue my dream of doing a super specialization. And as luck would have it, the very next day, the results of my MS exams were also declared. And pretty much the pattern of the previous day was repeated. Can any of you guess how did I fare in my MS exams? As I said, the pattern of the previous day repeated, and the pattern was of an unexpected result. And so very, very unexpectedly, you can add a zillion veries before the unexpected, I failed. And I flunked the most crucial exam of my life, and my entire world came crashing down. I was devastated. I simply did not know what to do. That was the first actual setback of my life, and I was totally unprepared to deal with it. I slipped into a major depression and became terribly bitter and negative. The only thing that I did in those days was pretty much what I had been doing all my life. I kept on studying. In due course of time, I cleared my MS exam, and I reappeared for the super specialty entrance exam, and this time around, I stood second in the entire country. And that helped me pick up my dream branch of urology in the institute of my choice, the very prestigious BJ Medical College, Ahmedabad. And so after 3 more years, I was armed with a super specialization in urology, which was the highest qualification that I could have achieved as a surgeon. But the bad news was that there were no more degrees to chase. There were no more academic achievements to go after. I could no longer hide behind the veneer of books. And the time had come to finally set up my practice in urology and to face the real world. So, did I do spectacularly well in the initial years of my practice? On the contrary, my progress was very meager, to say the least. And that was because I had mastered, even though I had mastered the academic aspect, I knew nothing else about how to set up a medical practice. Now, setting up any successful enterprise requires a harmonious culmination of a very healthy intelligence, emotional, and social quotients. Knowledge and skills will only take you so far, but inability to thrive under extreme pressure and lack of social skills would break you along the way, and that is exactly what was happening to me. I was stuck in a rut. I was emotionally labile, I was short-tempered, and I was prone to quick fatigue. I was frustrated with my slow progress, and I was angry with myself because I did not know how to figure a way out of it. And then, a seemingly insignificant event happened that was to completely turn my life around. My wife had taken the annual membership of a gym, but for some reasons she had to discontinue after a month. Now, being a Jain Baniya, I promptly went to claim a refund. And they equally politely told me that, sir, we don't have a refund policy, but maybe someone else can continue in her place. So I frantically looked around for a suitable replacement. And when I couldn't find any, then very reluctantly I thought that instead of wasting all the money, maybe I would enroll myself and maybe visit them once in a while. So what began as a casual foray had me hooked in no time. Exercise became an integral part of my daily routine, something that I wouldn't give up for anything else in the world. I ran like crazy on the treadmill, and I lifted weights with all the strength that I could muster. Because at the end of it, I would experience such calm and peace that I had never known all my life. My focus improved, my productivity skyrocketed, and issues that would earlier rile me up ceased to have any kind of an impact over me. And though this sounds too dramatic, a bit filmy perhaps, it is not surprising. Because any form of exercise is known to release loads of chemicals in your brain, which are the same that you experience in a euphoric state, or when you fall head over heels in love with somebody. The after effects are so powerful that you want to keep on going back again and again. And I know that this sounds like an addiction, and this is what precisely it is, only in the healthiest of ways. A popular misconception is that exercise primarily works on our bodies. However, it is actually the other way around. It has the most immediate and perhaps the most long-lasting impact on our brains. And it completely changes the way you would visualize, approach, and tackle any tenuous situation in your life. In fact, it remodels your thinking pattern by a process which we have a fancy name for, neuroplasticity. You do that consistently, and the effects are similar to that of deep meditation. And just imagine walking around in a Zen-like state of perpetual bliss. My interpersonal relationships also soared and improved drastically. Last year, we had a 25th school reunion. My batchmates, they simply failed to recognize me. They couldn't identify me with the person who had spent 9 long years with them, buried under the books. And as far as I'm concerned, all I wanted to do was play. I wanted to play and compete against the school sports team. And I took to the football field for the first time in my life. And I chased the ball as if my life depended on it. In fact, I almost ended up scoring a goal. The ball missed the top bar, and I would have happily traded a couple of my gold medals for that ball to have simply sailed in and ended at the back of the net. But maybe some other time. The next day, I opened the batting for my cricket team, along with a very dear friend of mine, who for all the dearness between us simply refused to accompany me. He said that this guy would get me run out, but somehow I cajoled and I persuaded him to go. And I'll tell you a secret. That very day, I batted and I lasted longer than him on the crease, perhaps scored more runs. And at the end of it, they had to request me to retire and relinquish the crease so that other guys could also get a chance. I felt blessed and full of bliss. As I said, at some point or the other, you have to go back to settle the unfinished businesses of your life. Just as you can't unfry an egg, similarly, you can't travel back in time to relive your life all over again. The good news is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter so long as you can bring about the changes in your life that enable you to lead a life of harmony and peace. Many a times, what we perceive as a jammed door is actually a window of opportunity. When I could join my super specialization course after having failed my MS exam, I thought that this is possibly the worst thing that life could do to me. But it was actually the opposite. Even though I had cleared my super specialization entrance exam in my first attempt, my rank was not good enough to fetch me a branch of my choice. Failure gave me more time to prepare, and this time I got a branch where I could get whatever I wanted. So the worst times in your lives would eventually pass. But the ability to withstand them and the fortitude and the strength to change them for the better is something that will always hold you in good stead. All that matters to me at this stage of my life is my health. And not just the physical aspect, also the mental, emotional, and the spiritual dimensions. The presence and the support of my loved ones around me, and finally my profession, strictly in that order. And this doesn't mean that I have become unambitious or have lost any of my professional drive. In fact, very, very recently, I was credited by the Limca Book of World Records for removing the largest adrenal tumor by keyhole surgery. Just like surgery, when you play sports, and it can be any sports, then your eyes, your mind, in fact, your entire being is focused on the ball. You are chasing it with all the strength that you have. You don't worry about what is going to happen in the previous moment. You don't celebrate and lament about what has happened. So basically, you're learning to live only in that moment. And you do that repeatedly, and it permeates every aspect of your life. And one day you finally realize that your life has transformed from something ordinary into something which is truly magical. If only I could talk to my 8-year-old self, I would tell him that you have a gift. You have a very rare and a precious gift, and it is the ability to unwaveringly focus and relentlessly chase all that you want in your life. And I'm sure that you would achieve everything that you set your eyes on. However, as you go about chasing your dreams, I really hope that you don't forget to breathe, that you don't forget to laugh until your eyes are filled with tears and your little tummy hurts, that you don't forget to run until you fall down and can't pick up yourself again, that you don't forget to dance in the rain and fall hopelessly in love no matter whatever be the outcome. And finally, as you go about the business of making a living, I sincerely hope that you don't forget to live. Thank you so much.